Happy Easter to all of you.
Happy Easter.
You know what I need to talk about? I'm a Jewish fellow. And I'm going to talk about Jesus. If the Pope understood what I understand, you wouldn't need a Pope. He doesn't understand anything. He's a good man, don't get me wrong. I mean, a very good man. Not good enough. He's not like Peter. He's educated. And he's trying to be as noble and as humble as possible. But humble is not an act. Humble doesn't look humble. Humble is before God, not before men. But when you're humble before God, men see your humbleness before God, and it's like one and the same. And just one more thing about the Pope, which I love and respect, is that if he could show people how to be as independent as I am, I have to be an example of it. I don't want to sound bragging, but I'm an independent person. You can't teach me anything except I agree with it and it makes sense to me. And I appreciate for the awakening. But you notice I don't have a big following. But I do. There's hundreds of thousands, millions out there, ever since 1953. But they come and go, and they listen when they want to, and they send me money if they want to. I don't have a tin cup. I don't pass the plate from one person to another just to make you feel obligated. Because then I've violated my own faith. I've obligated you to give money. I don't want to obligate you to come, because obligation is of the world. You have to be free. And so therefore, if I was the Pope, I would make sure you all understood how to find God for yourself, and not indirectly through ministers. That's simple. And religion cannot be taught. It cannot be taught. The fact that it's passed down from generation to generation is a good thing, because we need history as well as mystery. And with the history, that's the Old Testament, and the Adam and Eve story is the mystery of the beginning. There's a great deal of mystery right there that's relevant to the mystery at the other end of the story. Not the end, because we're not at the end yet, but you know what I mean, where Jesus appears. And so I can read the Bible and understand every single word of it as if I'd wrote it. I can tell you a little story. I began my life, in poverty, but I never felt I never felt impoverished. I was born in the Depression. So in 1928 to 1938, all I knew was poverty. My father had to work hard and hardly get anything done. But he managed. He was a very resourceful man. He could speak 11 languages, and there's nothing he couldn't build. A genius runs in my family, practically gallops. But all the male side of my family, inventors and entrepreneurs. I never met many of my uncles, but the aunts didn't do much, but the uncles, the men do it. And it's a man's thing to be able to press ahead. It's nice that ladies do it too, because they have to, not because they need too, because their husband's no damn good. So, just as a little side thought, we need men to be men. And in America, there's not many. And I'm taken. But anyway. So we need to talk about a little bit about my own past, because it may be helpful. I was born into a family. My brother wasn't so blessed. I got photographs of him dressed up a little girl in a photograph, and it was an old photograph. I do Photoshop, and I restored it. I said, "Oh my goodness, no wonder he's got a problem." My mother wanted a little girl, and so it's affected him. My mother wasn't a bad woman; she just wanted a little girl, and she was not deep. My father, I hardly ever knew him, but there's something about him. Something about him. I remember talking to him much, but when I did talk to him, I walked down the street, I was asking him, say, "Dad, you know, oxygen and hydrogen is water, right?" I can remember this. I said, "Could we not separate them from one another and drive cars?" He said, "Yeah, he could." And I remember talking to him about a few things. That's it. And there wasn't much else memory of, except him working in the cellar, fixing old watches, because at the beginning of the war he had an opportunity. He couldn't find a job. He was standing in line in the dole, in those days they called it. And he looked at himself, he looked at his hands, he said, "Why am I standing here?" And he had a few dollars equivalent. And by chance he fell into a whole bunch of watches that were broken. And he brought them out. And since he could fix everything, he built a little bench. And he silver-plated it and gold-plated it, God knows what he did. But he fixed it and was able to make enough watches, because you couldn't buy them in those days. And he left a little bit of money to my mother, and he died, 42. But the relevance of what I'm trying to say is, my brother was hurt and broken, but I was free, my disposition. And I would see photographs of my brother and I. He's standing, and you can see the face, you can see the features. Even from a child, he's already not happy. And I won't go any further than that. He's dying right now. But I wasn't touched. I was born into a family where my mother was sweet, harmless, but just a little bit empty, but decent. She took care of us like a dog takes care of puppies. That's about it. But she was dutiful. But my father was not that way. My father was deep, but I didn't know how deep he was. But his depth shed a light, a canopy. It's like a bubble over me, over the house. But I picked up on it. But I didn't know. And therefore, I've never felt any fear. Well, I have occasionally, but I overcame it. I looked at it, and it goes away. And that's it. And I had bravado. I would fight anybody, but I'd never look for fighting. And I'd win. And I can't say I never lost, because one day I did something with my ego. I can tell you a little story. My daughter, I'll get to Jesus in a minute. But my daughter bought a car, and somebody cheated her. So I went up to take care of it, and he wasn't going to give the money back, but he was kind of in my face, and I was up this flight of outside stairs, wooden stairs. And so he was really mean, so I went like this, bang, and I had to protect myself. I was going to knock him out, but I missed, and my tooth, and his tooth hit my forehead. See, not the nose. And I went rolling down that stairs. When I came home bloody, it's the only time it happened. I told my kids, you see what I did? I was egotistical because I'm strong and I never lose. I have a certain quality, but I lost it for that moment and I got to admit it to you. I'm ashamed. And my kids understood it. I broke a rib. But that was about it. I knew when I did wrong. And there was always a time when you're young and you're in the military, you've got to take care of yourself. But I always pick up the person and say, sorry, I didn't mean to want to hurt you, but somebody had to do it to you. You've never been disciplined. So I have to do it this way. But I've never felt fear. I went to Africa and had all kinds of adventures. And I've never felt any fear, so that there was nothing I couldn't do. Nothing. I never felt that I couldn't do anything. And when I was doing it, it wasn't anything that it was. I've looked back my whole life. All the sufferings, all the pains, all the trials and tribulations I've been through, I haven't noticed it. I just have vague memories of it. I can't hold a grudge. That's a good thing. As a result, I've been regenerating. I'm 85 years old. And you should have seen me before I had my heart operation, which failed. See, so it goes from one thing to another. I wrote a book called How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, and I had to change it to How Your Mind Can Make You Well, but then something has to make your mind well, because the mind can't do it by itself. Here comes the spiritual part of it. And so in the early days, when the bombs were falling, and we were living in Brighton Beach, and I was across the street from the beach with the barbed wire and the landmines, and nobody wanted that flat, that apartment. I got interested in magic. I'm very good at magic. I'm good at it. I can entertain. And I was intrigued how people could be so fascinated with what I'm really good at it. You'd think, if I was to do a magic trick with you right now, you would really think it was magic. That good. Because I had nothing else to do in a little tiny flat. I became interested because I'm interested in mystery. And then I went for a walk one day, and we passed a little vaudeville theatre in a back street. And the hypnotist was playing. I went in there, I earned $4 a week, I kept $1, so it cost 50 cents, basically, in English and American money. And there was the hypnotist making people dance with brooms, and nobody believed it, but I did. And so I'm leading up to something. So I had to understand that. Perhaps Hitler was doing this to his people. I said, why people act like lemmings? I was 15. Then I looked for books. Couldn't find any books that were any good. You'll not find a good one today. You won't find any good hypnotists today. They're all nuts. I'm in correspondence. I have LinkedIn, and I see these people talking to each other. They're crazy. And I told them so. I had a big hullabaloo on LinkedIn, if you know what that is. So I left them frustrated. But I got the hang of it. And then I went in the army. I learned to be a diamond cutter, and I was an apprentice, so I only got $4 a week, get what, 3 to my mother, and I kept 1 for myself, so I couldn't be too promiscuous. It was a good thing. I had to be very careful, turned over the nickels, the pennies, before I bought anything. And then in the army, I had lots of people to practice on. And I hypnotized the whole barracks. But the thing is, why could I do that? Why could I hypnotize the sergeant and all the officers? There was nobody I couldn't mess with. And if I was to do it to you now, you would know it. I can do it without you knowing. I don't need your permission. And see, and Hitler doesn't need your permission. And one of the ways you can take over a person's mind is through cruelty. That's what, cruelty and violence and beating is a programming called hypnosis. It's called sin when you hurt somebody, and when you betray somebody or shock somebody. But sin or hypnotic states is a result of shock and cruelty, whereby you have to be merciless and so show no mercy for your person you're beating. And then their reaction, especially as a child, will be one of subservience or rebellion, but the rebellion is a hypnotic state whereby he does to others what was done to him. So a bully is a hypnotist. That's what it is. Bully is a hypnotist. Svengali comes across as a hypnotist. But if you have a woman hypnotist, the chances are she has to be like your spoiling mother, like your bitch mother, excuse the expression. Don't be rude, but if you got one like that, not that they're all that way, nearly all of them that way, but they're difficult. And a difficult woman or a difficult father produces hypnotic states. And so therefore, the reason why children become traumatized is because parents, having been suppressed, bullied and suppressed by their parents, when they grow up to be parents, they are bullies, but they're cowardly bullies. They will not stand up to their parents, not stand up to people, but suppress and give the appearance of a noble man, and it's all buried inside, and soon he's married to a submissive woman and has children, then he can do it in safety. Because all cowards, all people who are traumatized are cowards. And they always will create stresses which they know they can overcome. And beating up a little child and demoralizing a little child and being able to upset with a little child is safe, relatively safe. So, pardon me, I'm human. Every other talk show host has a break, he can do that. And I don't have one here. Do you follow what I'm getting at so far? I'm giving you a story. And so, what I'm looking at is everybody is doing this to everybody. There's only two kinds of people, the bully and the coward is also a bully, in their own way. Even if they bully in a way in a way of what looks like love, but it's a soft violation. Love of a human being, not the love of God, not God's love is antithetical to that. But human love is submission, or to submit to someone in such a way as to get them to submit to you, because in other words, you rob them of their individuality by doing too much for them, so they will love you, and they will lure their loyalty to you like people on welfare. It's candy, and they can't escape the candy giver. So I'm talking about two parts of now. I'm talking about everybody is in a hypnotic state. It is systemic, and it begins with the Bible, the story of the Bible. It is absolutely unerringly accurate that man is born different from the beast of the field, from the worms and the germs and everything that's supposed to evolve into us. That is because all the animals are born innocent. The innocent lamb, the innocent lion, you can play with it. It's innocent. But it has an inclination to be what it is. It is a deer, it runs. It doesn't fight. If it's a carnivorous creature, it will fight each other or seek prey and have no mercy on it, like the big crocodile that goes and smashes it around and twists the carcass, and you think, oh, it's cruel. Survival of the fittest. And so it's a system of things. And it's important have survival of the fittest, because that's where perfection comes from. You're strong, you pass the genes of strength on to the next generation, and so on, and so forth. And the little tiny adaptation which keeps you alive is passed on to the next generation. So a horse could become eventually a giraffe, because the horse with the longest neck lives to pass on. It's that way. You can do your own genetic engineering and create from a wolf a little tiny puppy this big. It's still a wolf. You can also breed cowardliness and wimps and slaves into the human race. And you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it because it's already been done. It's passed from generation to generation. It's called being born into sin. And so, just go back, let me reflect back on how I got to know the things I do know. So having gone through the military and I didn't ever have to clean my rifle, I never had to clean my shoes. And nobody could beat me in judo. I was very skillful, but I had, all this was 6 months of practicing for the book. I could do a black belt. I could imagine the moves in my head and do it. And I could do it just from thinking about it. And it would just become real. So, let me just jump forward a little bit. I became a diamond cutter because that was the trade while I was practicing all these things. And I went into the military and did all those things. And I was always thinking what life is all about. Why is it I could do this so easy to people? What is the antidote? The antidote would be if you are traumatized and hypnotized, you have you've been programmed by a person, and that person owns you. But the person that owns you, your parent, your father, your mother, the school teacher, especially the unions, they had it done to them. And if you look far back, everybody has done it to everybody since the beginning. Because from one man, sin and death through sin spread through the human race. Right on the money. The whole human race had a beginning with a flaw. And the flaw is passed from one to another, and we cannot help ourselves. It's not possible. So that's the conclusion I came to, especially when I ended up, I should have brought the picture with me, but the Houston Herald is no longer, it was the second paper in Houston, Texas. I was practicing my diamond cutting, and my second business was on Montrose Boulevard with a posh place called the Institute of Hypnosis, and I practiced 7 years there. And the beginning of my career was a little girl fell down in front of my house, and I was practicing hypnosis and privately. People would come for smoking, but I didn't know a whole lot, as much as I know now. And she fell down and broke her arm horribly. It was just breaking. It was just broken. And she was screaming. So I came out of the house and all the neighbors came. And I walked up to the little girl and I said, put my hand on her head. And I said, "Do you love me?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Now you don't listen to anybody, but I'm going to take your pain away." Immediately it was silent. And the newspapers, it was front page in the newspaper. Headlines: hypnotist takes the pain away from a little girl's broken arm. And in that, it said, I asked the little girl if she loved me. And she said she did. But that wasn't hypnotism. That was more like the magic. If I may use the word magic, because I can't find another word for it. Faith is magic. The universe is magic. It's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. God produces the universe, out of a hat, but there's no hat. It's like, who can explain it? And who can explain faith? And who can explain what I'm trying to explain, which is more than we can comprehend, is that we're born in sin. Exactly so. Everybody, but I wasn't. Because I escaped the transfer. I was like Moses. He escaped the transfer of craziness from generation to generation. And he was picked out of the reed boat, and he was floated down the Nile by, a loving princess, and became his mother. He was almost in line to be his second choice of a son to Pharaoh. He could have been Pharaoh. But you know the story. He just lost it for a moment to show that he was not like everybody else. He couldn't stand the beating of taskmaster. He couldn't stand it. Even though he could have, remanded him and did what he'd like, he couldn't help it. But that's beside the point. I missed that. That doesn't mean to say I wasn't a naughty boy somewhere down the line, just a little bit. But I would catch it. I would understand it. And I would get past it. And so I end up now in the Institute of Hypnosis, all the things I'm telling you. And one day, Christian people are just as sick as everybody else. If not more sick, because they should know better. There's more shame on them that they don't know it. They don't understand that, you don't need a teacher. You don't need a rabbi. And you only have one Father. And the kingdom of heaven is within you. And even Jesus says, of myself I can do nothing. Why call me good anyway? All those things. And then they call him God, which is ridiculous. But he was the agent of change. He was the Son of God. He has God's nature in him. He wasn't born like us. He was born immaculate. Has to be. The seed of first man is polluted, perverted. That's why you have the Cain kills Abel. He didn't go very far. Cain kills Abel. Why? Because he was jealous. That was it. Of his goodness. And so to the degree that you are good, decent, but suppressed, and the reason why you're suppressed, because when you come into the world, you were different like of everybody else. And the teachers came down on you, the kids came down on you, and your parents could not tolerate your innocence and the beauty of your independence. See, you come into that, you're innocent when you come into the world, but understandably you lose it. So you need to understand you're not guilty of anything. Except me knocking over my cure stress device. It's sacrilege. So you're not guilty of anything. You're only guilty, in a sense, I don't know if I can, it's hard to say, but bear with me, because it's a very fine point. But you did not incur guilt. It was put upon you. Oh, you little snot nose, who do you think you are? Get upstairs, You can't talk to me that way. But Dad, but I didn't do what you said. Get out of it. I can't act it out very well. I need to go to acting school to do it, but it's not very good. But you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Because you experienced it. Just being judgmental, just being impatient is horrible. Impatient parent is that kind of bully that is taking his terrible frustration, although he has such a serene framework of looks. And you marry that man, and he is a noble man, and he does all the things that he should. Yet when it comes to the children, all of a sudden, if they don't obey him, bingo, it comes out. Invents it, because they want to be respected. Just like the person who did him in wanted to be respected, but the only way we can be respected is by relativity. The innocence of a child disturbs such a parent. And that parent could be a psychopath, but psychopaths and sociopaths are rare. The devil himself is the ideal sociopath and psychopath. There are a few of those like Adolf Hitler and Stalin. They have no mercy, no soul. There's no possible salvation. You can hold a cross. And he laughs at you and then kills you. I remember in the War of the Worlds, and all the different spacecraft coming up. Do you remember the War of the Worlds, the old one? and it's throwing death rays at everything. And here's this preacher saying he picks up his cross and walks towards these huge machines with ray guns. He disappears. I couldn't help laughing. It doesn't always work. It works on people. It works on people that you can help, who are open to it and parallel to it, and just need it. But the cross itself won't do it. It's the person that holds it, and the person who is it, who passes down that symbol that demons everywhere recognize as a defeat, as a reminder of defeat. That's why I have a cross. When I use it once in a while, I don't need it all the time. So the lady came in. Now I'm coming back again. I'm going around, but if you give me these little pieces, I hope they fix together. A lady comes in. She's a Christian lady, and she has anxiety and everything. So I sit her down, and this is sort of like towards the end of my work, where I had already written How Your Mind Can Keep You Well. I made the CD, not the CD, a record, which is what you get today. It hasn't changed. It's been re-recorded because the quality is better. But she came in and I sat her down, but it was the remark she made to me. This is where I became, kind of a Christian. Not like you, forgive me, but I became a Christian in this sense, and I'll tell you in a minute. She says, well, what did you do to me yesterday? Or a couple of days ago. I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, my husband says I've changed. She says, I'm serene, I'm patient, and you're completely different. And he's affected by that. He's affected by it in a positive way, but he could be affected in a negative way. I've had, if I may jump around a little bit, I've had a mother and two daughters who had a bully husband, really a bad bully. And so this was many years ago. It's in the book, Healers and Gurus and Spiritual Guides. You can actually, it's called The Beginning if you want to look it up on the story on the web. And a CBS correspondent, news correspondent, wrote the book about me. And half of it is about all the different people he interviewed, and this story is one of them. And so I helped the mother and the two girls, and they couldn't be afraid of the father anymore. Couldn't be. And so when he went into raving and craziness, they wouldn't respond. They had that grace. That all I can say is that bubble around them, like I had as a child, and that's innocence. And you couldn't break that innocence because they had returned to. They've been redeemed from Paradise Lost. This is what I do. I didn't know I was doing it. I didn't know I had translated or transformed my work in hypnosis into spiritual things. All I knew when I left Houston after being in jail for 30 days and hypnotizing everybody in the jail, and pretty soon they couldn't wait to let me go, because I wouldn't stop. They put me in solitary confinement. They actually accused me of practicing medicine without a license. I'm doing it right now, and I'm doing it on the radio, and I've never stopped, and everybody leaves me alone. They don't want to mess with me. Not because I'm smart, because I can't help being who I am. And Jesus couldn't help being who he is. And I like it. I like being subject to whoever's doing that to me, but I didn't know who that was. I kind of, didn't like my own religion. It was good, but it wasn't good enough. So I never read the Bible much. But one day that lady came in. If I'm jumping around, forgive me, but I hope I'm holding these things together. A lady came in, she said, what do you do? And my husband's getting better and all the rest of it. Now I've got to go back to the other one, forgive me. So this father who was really, really mean with the two ladies, the lady and the two girls, he looked at the record and he figured, now I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure this out. And he sat and listened to it, but it didn't touch him. It irritated him. He couldn't figure out what was doing that to them, what was there. And the year went by, And one day, they would never be bothered. And he got more upset he couldn't bother them. And you see, there's a dynamic here. If you try to upset me, you get upset from being upset. And Jesus would have the same effect on people, but then some. He was able to influence the world couldn't influence him. They couldn't break him. And he wasn't going to be broken. We could be broken, basically. Most of us got broken. I was lucky, fortunate. Somebody has to be a Moses to escape it, to get to be where I got. It doesn't mean to say I wasn't broken a time or two. But I escaped the original one. See, in a manner of speaking. My mother was good. My father was decent. See, so I wasn't touched. But my mother was not good enough for my brother, because he bears the mark of that today. He hates me. He hates me. He practices Judaism, and he does all the noises, and he makes all the rituals. And I'm a free spirit, and he thinks that, you know, I'm an atheist, and I'm a whatever it is, cult leader, whatever. See, he hates me. Poison. It's killing him. But the lady and the two girls carried on like that until one day they came into the house and the record was going and he was dead. Because he hated it, hated it, hated it, hated it. And he just had to figure it out. The pride was so much. And the more he listened to it, the more it affected him negatively. So I'll tell you that when you get grace, when you have grace, don't mean to say that everything's going to go good for you. Even the bad works together for good for you. Because what I learned, I'll come back to the lady, the other lady, the Christian lady that came to me. Because that's where I learned the spiritual side of it. I realized there was a spiritual side of it. She said to me, I'll jump back to that now. She said, if you open the Bible, the New Testament, you will see your exact words, what you said to me. And I did, and I can't remember what it was. It was right on the money. And then I began to read the whole New Testament. But I would not read a story from beginning to end. I'd open a book, and I'd stop. And I'd see this, and I'd see that. And everywhere I went, I understood it. It was in me. And so I said, that's who you are. See, a little baby, when it comes into the world, is not conscious yet. And when consciousness appears, because mother hopefully breastfeeds the baby, and not doesn't foolishly just give them goat milk or something, unless it's an emergency. But as the child begins to grow, and mother changes the diaper and gives him food, he doesn't know his mother's there. And then one day he opens his eyes and says, Mama, gives mother a name. See, there's no longer nobody. Somebody has been helping them all along. That's me. I opened my eyes, and at the age of 35 or 36, that's who you are. That's who's been following me all my life. Because I couldn't lose. You couldn't do it. You couldn't touch me. I can remember the escapades, and I could fill you in with a little story. I was in South Africa, and I'm a diamond cutter by profession, so I make a living. And I was going to make South Africa my home, but I see the dangers in South Africa and eventually went home. But I went home this way. They had a strike, a union strike, and I'm Jewish. They knew it. And they wouldn't let me belong to the union, so I couldn't work in South Africa at all. If I couldn't belong to the union, not that I wanted to belong to the union, but that was the way I could make a living. I had my brother with me, and I was putting him through school. I was taking care of him. but he never was appreciative. It's really strange, but I won't tell you all about that. So I had no other choice. This is what I did. I just put pepper in my pocket, cayenne pepper, glasses, big stick, 100 people out there, walk up to them, put these glasses on. I was going to smash my way through. But the thing was, it was the only choice I had. I had no money. I had not enough money. I couldn't get home. 6,000 miles away from home. No way of making a living. And so I approached them, put my goggles on, but the thing is, there was no fear. It's just something you got to do. Weird. And as I approached, they saw me put my glasses on. I got with that big heavy stick under my coat, and I walked straight up to them, and the Red Seas parted. They let me through. There's something about me that made that happen, and there's something about me that protects me. And it's taken a long while for me to discuss this. I'm 85 years old. I've been talking about it for some time, but it took a while to understand there was a force at work. It just wasn't words. And so what I was realizing as I finished my sojourn in the Institute of Hypnosis and said, I've got to spread this to the world, I sold my Corvair and got an old Mercury Montclair and got a house trailer, and off we went. I flicked the coin. Which way do I go? East or west? It came to west, and off I went. And I settled down and went on radio. I spent $35 for an hour, 15 minutes. And then the owner, who became my best friend for life, he said, let me give you 45 minutes public service in those days. So and pretty soon, I had huge audiences. And the audiences I had then are not the same audiences I have now, because the American people were much more noble, and American people are so corrupt, you can hardly talk to anybody. I can't hardly talk to anybody on the radio. It's all nonsense calls, all talking over the fence calls. I can talk for an hour about the root of the problem. Resentment is the root, and all the other things are just sprouts along the way of degeneration. But you can hear that, and they always say, well, how can I get rid of rage? I said, I've been talking about it for half an hour. Can't hear it. There's a difference, you see. There's a difference between the Israelites in those days and the people those days. They didn't have enough money to buy pot or drugs or drink. They had barely enough money for a piece of bread. So they were open. American people are finished because they have excess, and they are wallowing in the excess, stroking themselves into forgetfulness, into a sense of worthless worth. You can't get to them. So I come along, now as time went along, the fact that I gave up the hypnosis moniker, and I became a church. But that is in 1980, and so I've been that way ever since. And so I'm working now mostly not so much as a hypnotist, but as a counterforce to hypnotism. Because if you want to wake a person up from a trance, you're dealing with someone who's owned by somebody, and they owe that loyalty to their past. So if I I'm bringing Jesus into this, don't worry, I'm going to give you a little background soon. But if you have a person who's programmed by trauma, there's a strange thing about trauma. All who sin are slaves. All who hypnotized, traumatized. If you examine the socialist or communist handbooks of conquering a country, if you have no mercy, on anyone and you just mercilessly beat them, that guarantees a hypnotic state. They say that. There is no hypnotic state without that. And if you're born outside that and you have the kind of curiosity that was given to me, nothing could touch you. And a person like myself is very dangerous to everybody else. And everybody else, I was dangerous to everybody else, even the sergeant. He tried to break me, I broke him. I mean, he didn't know what to do with me. And after the war was over, you know, he happened to be at a dance I went to when I was a young man. I had a few dollars then. And he saw me coming. You know, it was an innocent place. We used to have real bands there in those days. And it was more innocent, even though it wasn't innocent. And he said, "It's you!" He almost had a fit. You couldn't program me. I would do my drill, but you couldn't program me. I would really be myself. He wanted to own me. And in businesses, often you have a rich, well-to-do owner, and you may find that he will drive people not because he needs money, but he wants your soul. You get that pressure. And it's the same thing with your parents. They don't know it. When they are mean to the children, they don't know they're mean. They think there's something wrong with the kids. And the kids don't know how to deal with that. Because when they look at their parent and the parent will think that there's something wrong with the child for seeing something wrong with them, because the kids do see the fault of the parent, but the parent has projected it into the child who's reacting, so therefore the one that reacts has got the problem. It's called projection. Then you punish yourself in them. See? You punish your projection. And that can come to murder. Wholesale murder, like in Hitler Germany. Everybody's doing it to everybody else, and everybody has a bloodlust. In the bottom, the front line then has to go. They've all been owned by, they've all been compromised and programmed. And so in order to survive as recreated, the word recreated, the people on the bottom, the soldiers, their reward, you know, the reward of socialist and fascist types of people is rape, murder, and gain, plunder. That's their reward. Not our soldiers. Our soldiers are not the same thing. That kind of people, whole armies of them, wholesale. They are programmed in children, and that programming is exploited by those who know how to take charge of that system that we're born into. And that's what's happening to America. You're losing it because Christians are feeble. You don't hear this from the churches anymore. And so, coming back to the Pope, and I said, if I was the Pope, I would set my people free from me. And as I do the same thing with you, I'm trying to set you free. The tendency for you is to cling to me for a while. I don't mind that. But I keep brushing you aside and pushing you back on yourself. Isn't that right? Yes. You're not coming here anymore with your oxygen tank. No. She came without an oxygen tank.
And this week I even had to have a friend check my oximeter because I thought it was broken. My oxygen was so high without any oxygen,
Yeah, 99.
And what?
It's better than mine.
Yeah. And I don't know, this week I was just like...
You're exercising?
Yeah, I'm exercising much more than I was.
This lady had emphysema, nobody can cure it. Yeah. And everybody who's here has been watching this. And it just started to get better. And all she needed to do was talk with me.
Yeah.
Jesus talks with people. He does a lot better job than I can do, of course. But I have a little bit. It's taken me 85 years to get a little tiny piece of it. But I can do the same thing as long as God acts through me, and I'm not a hypnotist anymore. I countermand hypnotic states. Because if I use all the hypnotists use hypnotism to cure people. And they're all atheists. They just think that this is a mental sickness that they can cure. No, they cannot. You only make people worse, and you always make people a slave. If you help them to stop smoking, they'll start drinking. Or if you help them to stop smoking, they start eating. You see, if you help them to start eating, they start smoking. They had to gratify something with something. You see, so all of the compulsions have the same thing, have the same MO. Eating, drinking, drugs, sexual perversions, just money, anything. You name all the sins, they're all the same. They all serve the same purpose. So if you're able to stop one, you're able to hypnosis, you have control of the mind, so you don't like cigarettes anymore, but you can't stop eating. And then a woman is fat. She's only fat to protect herself, so she's ugly. She hates men because her attraction has violated her and brings all the wrong kind of people. So in her frustration and anger, there's an emptiness, and the emptiness is cured by the wrong kind of fulfillment. She needs a fulfillment, the nearest physical equivalent. The nearest equivalent to the spiritual emptiness is the hunger that is felt somewhere in the solar plexus, so you think you're hungry all the time, and you're not. It's just an emptiness you have to fill with something. So everybody who's overweight got a problem. Even the smallest amount of overweight has a problem, and because it gets worse. But they may smoke and do other things, so therefore it levels it out. So you have a little smorgasbord, and you look normal. See? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to tell you, you were telling the story about the little girl that broke her arm and you put your hand on her. Well, when I first heard your voice, I just knew that there was something in you that I had been searching for my whole life, but I didn't understand anything. I was so messed up at that time. I didn't understand what you were saying, but I knew there was just something about your voice. And it's taken me years and years of listening to you to come to this point, but I just thought that was so strange.
But it just shows you the redemption. It just shows you the power of recuperative power, that you can be saved.
Right.
And so, Jesus comes along, right?
Yeah.
He was the promised Messiah. And again, they heard his voice. They listened to what he had to say. And he gave a little talk, something like what I'm talking about. I'm sure that what you read in the scripture is only a little tiny piece of it. They didn't have stenographers in those days. You couldn't possibly remember. You could remember some of the details, some of the sayings, love your neighbor as yourself, and then the Sermon on the Mount. Those are memorable things, but he spoke with people. He talked with them. He had a seminar all day on the side of a hill, except he could feed them without a catering system. And there's certain magic. But remember, I started my life doing magic. And the magic of it was simply, I knew magic was something. But the magic, I'll come back to that if you don't mind, because I learned, I tell you what, let me just jump forward. My son-in-law, David, he had appendicitis. And so I wheeled him into the hospital, and they ignored him, the local hospital here. And he was dying. I said, hey, we can't wait here. My son-in-law's dying. He's in agony. He's got appendicitis, I can tell that. But he wouldn't let him in. I said, I'm calling 911. And then they brought the guards out. I said, you're not going to bully me. Take this man in. But after a hullabaloo, they took him in. Anyway, so I was walking around. And so I got talking to a lady doctor. I do a little sleight of hand, just a little fun. If somebody hands me a card, I'll say, why? Why you got it blank on both sides? So give me another one. Why is it printed on both sides? I turned it over twice, but you can't see it. But the point is, when I did this trick, she said, damn, that makes me mad. Got it. See? the fact that you challenge somebody, you do something so well it's like magical, and they can't figure it out, upsets them. But then you own it. So I found out that when I did a trick, I did a magic trick, and when I do tricks to children, I love doing tricks to children. I say, no, this isn't real. Because I used to use magic with kids because it opens them up, in a good way. And then I could talk to them in a good way. I go past a lot of boundaries where they transfer. Wow. But the kids are not angry. But they open themselves to me. People can be dismissive with that sort of thing if you see a stage trick, but when you see me do it personally, it is really astonishing. See, so when you do that, like on the fly, she said, "Damn!" I immediately knew that the shock of me being able to do something that's mystical and beyond their comprehension, and they don't understand it, is threatening. So is innocence threatening. Because they don't understand that. The very presence of innocence is threatening. So I tell you, each one of you sitting here was innocent when you were a little child, and you were hated for it. That's why you're in a mess. You can remember it, that maybe your siblings, that your parents were kinder to your siblings than to you, but you couldn't do the right thing. They conformed. And in the government, it's very similar. A government is like a parent, and they reward those who submit to them, and reward them, and disable them, and become dependent. So they have to do as they're told, and they can't exist for themselves. So they're loyal, and they'll vote. So government people will always vote for government. That's why you want a big government, because you know for sure, if you treat them better than anybody else, they'll be loyal. So you see, you've owned them, you bought them. So where was I? I forgot. Can anybody remember my last words?
You were talking about the magic with the nurse.
Yes. So I learned about that, and I also learned that you cannot undo hypnotic states. A human being can't reverse what was done to them, because all I can do is to transfer your loyalty to them, to me, and then you'll be mine. And I would control your thoughts, but you think of them as your thoughts, and you wouldn't know any difference. You'd feel freedom for a little while, but when you go to church, you're being hypnotized too. You sit there for an hour or so, and some boring person, and you stand up and you sit down and you say, "Oh, we're Christian soldiers," and it's like it's like being drunk. The person who's caught up in religion is drunk on religion, and maybe never is not quite right, but religion can spring to life in you, which is what I hope it to do when you pick up a Bible. I hope that as I've given you the key, so that you don't study it. You don't want to study religion. Do not commit words to memory. And read the Bible with the view of looking for something, but you don't know what you're looking for. And whatever is the something within you that's inside you, scanning the pages. Scan the pages. Don't read a book. Don't read a science book. I've written a book on physics. I already know how to build a spacecraft. I'm telling you right now, I understand the key after having written it. You need to get a copy of that book. Of turning a rotating frame. I understand a rotating frame is something unusual. And I've seen the unusual part of it. In the idea of a spacecraft, in the air you imagine something spinning on the outside. Always something spinning with lights. There's something about that which I now understand. But I never cracked a book. The only book I cracked was Einstein's book for kids. That's as far as I got. And I scanned it and didn't understand some of it. Electricity, AC, DC, whatever, magnetism. It didn't say much. I only needed 1 + 1 makes 2. 2 + 1, mathematics. If I want to be a mathematician, leave me alone. I'll figure it out. If I don't know what it is, I'll look it up, and then I appreciate it. I did the same thing with my toys. I throw the instructions away and put it together all wrong. Then try to fix it. It took twice as long, and I did it, but sometimes when I couldn't fix it, I looked for the instructions and I appreciate the instructions. See? I want to do it my own if I can. So now I can do it on my own because I can. Yeah. So everything I've written. Look, all those books. When I look back at all my books, I don't remember writing. It's all about Jesus. I remember sort of swearing, if it's just a word, that I would not write about religion. Yet every book has it. I can't remember writing it in there. So I can only understand that I didn't write it. It's so hard to explain. I remember that I started my first book, and I thought, but something said you've got to write a book, as well as doing the record thing. I said, but I don't know how to write a book. He said, write a couple of paragraphs. It's just what it said to me with words, without words, no words. And I followed it. I wrote a couple of paragraphs, and I wrote down what I learned every day. 20 books. But I wasn't a religious person. I was, but I didn't know it. And so I'd write down what I know, but I look back, and every single book from day one had Jesus in it. I'm Jewish. How did that come from? I hadn't been converted yet. I didn't know it was it yet. Except when I said, oh, that's who you are. He's been following me all my life and keeping an eye on me. And he's following you. He's following you because you recognize me. You recognize that it takes one to know it. See? You recognize my voice. But that's not my voice. I got a pretty bad voice right now, but it's the tone. But now let me go to the heart of the issue. That is the preamble. You cannot unhypnotize a person. It becomes hypnosis. And I become part of the problem. And if I get prideful, I may help that person. That person can turn on me when it gets worse and blame me, because for fooling them, or become attached to me such that I don't know how to get rid of them, except reject them completely, and that's not easy to do. Now, let me start now with what I heard on O'Reilly last evening, because it was not last evening, it was Friday. Because it was Easter Friday, he had a rabbi on and a Catholic priest on, and they were talking about if there's such thing as a devil. And the rabbi had a cockamamie idea. It's just a force. Just a force. Where's the force coming from? Is it an intelligent force? It doesn't make any sense. Just a force. But the Catholic priest had a better one. But he concluded that both of them concluded that we are born with this choice, but we're not. That's the problem. See, all of what I said just now is trying to tell you that you've never had a choice in your whole life. You just think you're making a choice. You're just thinking your thoughts are your own. If you're born into Borneo, you'd be a cannibal with no way out. And if you had a bright look in your eye, they'd put you in the soup pot. They wouldn't tolerate you. At least in America, you come up in a bad family, you have a chance to get better. Because you can't guarantee that everybody's born. You can't get rid of this chain of command that comes through the generations. Cannot be stopped. Every person comes into the world is broken. Except Moses. He escaped it. Now running forward again, why do you think he walked in the desert for 40 years? 2 reasons. Because you can see the first reason when his back was turned, thousands of them worshipped the golden idol. He had to kill 20,000 people of his own. He had to kill 20,000 of his own people. Kill them. They were so dangerous, infectious to everybody else. And the rest of them, he walked around for 40 years. Do you think he didn't know where he was going? He's a prince of the desert. He walked them around to create soldiers and to create men and women, harden them and strengthen them spiritually. And when all the old people died away because you couldn't cure them, what was left of them, then you had a new nation. And it goes from there. So, where's I'm going from there? I was going to go somewhere. Where was I going to go?
You said 2 reasons. That was one.
What, 2 reasons for what?
You started talking about Moses, and you said there were 2 things, and one was to cleanse the people, and then there was something else.
Oh dear. Well, when I jump around like that, when I jump around, because there's so many things that are similar. Oh yes, there's 2 reasons. So he could not get rid of what was wrong. He had to wait for the older generation to die and bring up the new ones. The truth of the matter, he didn't have the kind of knowledge that Jesus had that could save you from this. He didn't have that. That was the best thing he could do. But I have learned, it seems to be, because I'm Jewish, there's an inheritance that knows, it's sort of systemic. I think the Jewish people were meant to be a nation of priests. And they rose up, and they didn't. They disobeyed, and they had to pay the price for wandering, for 2,000 years suffering. They've come back to Israel now. They're still missing something. They're still missing something, as we all are missing something, and they're doing the best they can. But what I've discovered is that you do need a savior. You do need a person who does not have a human father. Because the human father is the problem, as you ladies know. You can have your way with him. See? And if you can't have your way with him, if you can have your way with him, he's a wimp. If you have a way with him, he could be a violent person who does not know how to deal with the woman, and he goes out with other women, and he gets drunk, and he got problems that way. But the men all have problems with women because women inherit. This is not against women. Do you understand that? This is the fact that women need to be loved. They need to have the love. Men need to love the hell out of them. But they don't understand. They're drawn back to the woman because she's a hypnotist. Do you understand? The first man was seduced. And so therefore, she owned him. And what owned her? Dark side. And so we're coming back to the story of Riley, and they were talking about the force. One says there is a force, but both agreed. One says there's a devil, one says there's a force, but they both agreed we have free will. We do not have free will. Nobody has free will. There is no such thing as freedom. Ultimately, there's a freedom of wrong to do right, and the freedom of right to do wrong. But you are born into a system where you're not free to do the right thing, but you can do as best you can, go as far as your fallen nature will permit. You can actually have a facade that is good and kind, like the Pope. He's not perfect. If he was perfected, if he was a Peter, he would proclaim, he would change the church so that he wouldn't be worshipped. Because he is worshipped. That's what he is worshipped. And therefore the people, he is a hypnotist that keeps, it's not much different to Hitler, except it's a better form of Hitler. See, there's the good Hitler, the sociopathic Hitler, which is, the sociopath is nicer than God. He charms you, he loves you so much, that you will give your whole life to him. And so will the bully. You'll fear him so much, you feel guilty for hating him so much, he guilts you into making you obedient to him, servitude. And if you will disobey, he beats you more. And the more he beats you and depraves you, the more you hate him. The more you hate him, the further you fall from God. The more he imprints you with himself. And then something in himself, in him, is in you that cries out to him to reinforce the sense of worth and a sense of worthless worth. And he either blesses you or he curses you. And that kind of person you can't do enough for. No matter how much you try to do for them, they may, luckily, every now and then, they might appreciate you and you feel so good. Oh, he loves me. And then you try harder. He looks, and actually, you can be so good, he hates you for it. Because that's what he hates. He hates the goodness, even if it is a semblance of it. He hates it. You cannot be free. Who understands what I'm talking about? That's why you're here. And so therefore only the truth will set you free, but where's the truth? Where's the truth in the church? Nowhere. Where's the truth in the psychiatrist's couch? Nowhere. Where's the truth in the friends? They're all fiends. You're only going to look for friends that support what's wrong with you, and then you get screwed. Pardon the expression. They get betrayed. Or you become addicted to pleasing everybody. And you spend your whole life giving your life to everybody and never having a life of your own. And no one will ever love you enough, and you begin to secretly hate people for not loving you. Or you might hate them for loving you because it encourages you to be a slave, and you can't help. You'll do anything for that little tidbit of approval. It doesn't have to be material. It has to be the idea that somebody loves you. That almost goes back to the heart of what it could be in reverse. If somebody could love you from what you are. In church you get loved. God loves you for what you are, or as you are. That little word as. Even if it's not said, God loves you, what does it mean? It means like everybody else loves you, like your girlfriend loves you. What difference does it make? Anything can love you. But that love only supports the worst in you. There's the human love. We love each other. But we don't make each other any better. Husband and wife don't make each other any better when they love each other, when you're loving and being loved. It soon becomes intrigue, right? It does. So what you need is something transcendent to that love. So that it modifies that love so it's pure. And so when you're loving and being loved, or screwing and being screwed, if you don't mind me using that language, see, your life is miserable. And your expressed emotion, you may not get ulcers, but you give them. So you can project your own cruelty and your frustrations into somebody else and judge it there. And then even try to rescue it, like mothers often do. You love a child too much, he becomes a criminal because you love him for what he is. You love him, you love the fallen nature that you've produced. And if you keep loving him, he becomes dependent and he can't figure anything for himself, or he feels like the mother is pulling on him and wants something from him. He purposely becomes rebellious in order to stop the mother from loving him. Because the loving is sucking, pulling on him. And he feels it. He doesn't understand what it is. But he hates it. And therefore misbehaves in order to stop her from loving. But it doesn't stop him from wanting to reproduce and look for a woman. He becomes woman-centered, so sooner or later he's going to be looking for the mother, looking for the sex to reproduce himself, because anger and hostility awakens the senses, all of them, especially the reproductive one, which is very strong, insatiably. And pretty soon he's insatiably involved with the woman and the violence and the children. It's the same story. See? So we need a different kind of love. And we need a different kind of man. And he can't be born from a woman. He has to be born again. So we all have to be born again, but because we didn't come from immaculate conception, we came from the lineage of original sin. And so the whole country, whole world is that way. And we all do the best we can. Don't get me wrong. You're decent people. But you're broken. And you're sick, and Christians are sick like everybody else, when they shouldn't be. And ministers should be able to heal, like Jesus did. They can't. Because they've transferred loyalty to the man. And Jesus says, don't heap up teachers to yourself. Don't call any man teacher. Don't call any man father. You only have one father and one teacher. He's within you. See, they're coming for me now. See, he sets them free. Now, here's more things. The fact that they believed in him, and the disciples were able to carry that forward to some degree, but that era went out, and it became polluted. There's another word for the polluted religion. What's the word for religion that is not fraud? There's a special...
Heresy, apostasy.
Apostasy. I was thinking, trying to say, what is that word? All night. Woke up 4 o'clock in the morning. Where's apostasy? Here, thank you for it. See, it's nice to deliver that to me right away, and I can deliver something to you the same way, where you'll be pondering it all your life. I could just put it in your lap. So, you cannot learn religion. You cannot do it. It has to come from someone who believes in Jesus. I didn't know who that was following me in my life, but I eventually recognized it, and that was to me, well, I can't say that I was overwhelmed, but it was interesting. But a person like my friend here, she sees, I've had that all my life, so I hardly noticed it. I hardly notice it now. I feel just like an ordinary person, not anybody else, and I'm an ordinary person, but I have extraordinary energies. And I can do things, as with that lady and other people, that others cannot do it, because what is in me is different from what's in everybody else and all the preachers. That's what you said.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not being proud of it, it's so.
That's the way it is.
And it takes one to know one, and if you see it in me, and you welcome it, it means you've been searching. And it's incumbent on me to be that, and not to deceive you. Not to have I can actually say I'm a minister and wear a collar, and I have a doctorate. I can call myself doctor. Why don't I call myself Dr. Roy? I'm a doctor of religion of some kind. I've got a little plaque on the wall I signed myself. I can do all that.
It's like I said, when I was 13, I stopped going to church because somehow it didn't do it for me. But the minute I heard your voice, it was like, that's what I've been searching for.
But the church had something that is, I find it's easy to convert Christians to true Christianity, because they have a basis for it.
Foundation.
Yeah, foundation for it. Yeah, they have a foundation for it. They've recognized the value of the Scripture.
Right.
But they haven't. But they've been told what it means rather than seeing it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person who the overriding influence doesn't understand it for himself, because he went to college, and he gets a degree in divinity of some kind, and so therefore he hasn't got it.
Right.
And when you're educated, you're also educated out of all the common sense you were born with, except with an exception or two. And every now and then, a person who's been educated, brainwashed, suddenly, realizes there's something wrong with his life, because when you're educated, the knowledge of good and knowledge of evil are both forbidden. The knowledge of good is not. You don't get God or good from reading and learning it and acting it out like an actor on the stage, and then getting applause for how well you act. And you're still corrupt, and you're troubled. You don't feel right about being right. Some people feel right about being right that way, and they go through their whole life being a hypocrite. But some of you can't. You couldn't.
No.
See, you couldn't learn it. And it's almost like you were something once you make you reject religion, but you didn't. You knew
No,
this.
I didn't even. People who went to church, I didn't mind. That was their way, but for some reason I couldn't go that way.
You're different. See, you're special. So I can't tell you what makes people special, but there aren't many special people left in America. I'm very sorry to say. There's a very small percentage, represented by some of you, most of you people here. So, just to wrap this up a little bit. Immaculate conception is necessary. You have to have, because the father is the head of the home. And that, ideally speaking, that's the order. But the head of the home, as bred through many levels of generations, are weak for women. And so therefore they do not have authority in their home. The woman is the authority. But she's doing is she's nagging to pull that authority out of a man to say, not tonight, Josephine. You see what I mean? She wants that. But what she gets is sex with lust. She gets abused. And she can't speak of it. She can't understand her own entrapment. See that? And then she hates her husband, and she feels guilty about that. And then in that guilt, she's guilted into give him what he wants, hoping that perhaps if she loves him, but it isn't love, it's seduction. And she cannot help but seduce. Well, the only thing she could do is turn away from him, and he goes and gets another woman who would do it for him. Who understands what I'm talking about? You do, don't you? See, so there's something wrong with the dynamic of the country. And you can see very careful how sex has been promoted as normal. Condoms on bananas, excuse the expression, I couldn't say that, but it simply got, I almost fell on the floor when I heard that. But the point is, it's what they teach in school. When the kids are not even old enough to understand what it is, they started early. And the children are exposed to something that adults can't even handle, let alone kids. And so what they've done is corrupt. What the socialist government has done, I don't want to be too much political here, what they've done in order to take over the country is to keep that system going. The romantic thing where women are everything and women are everything and men love the women and it's all hunky-dory and love and flowers and roses and 70% divorce rate. And then, children without fathers, bred in the ghettos, generation after generation paid to produce children, who produce children, and until you've bred out all that's good in everybody, because we've lost our morals, our values, and it spread to all of America. It became fashion after a while and glorified, and to find an innocent person is rare. And if an innocent person shows up, everybody makes fun of them. Right? See that? So, but nobody makes fun of me. Better not. But anyway, I've been here for 2 hours and I didn't even know it. Is it 2 hours? Hour and a half. Well, I got another half hour, so shut up. Keep the cameras running. Because 2 hours, I'm just getting started after an hour and a half. What are you talking about? Now, when you believe in Jesus, when you believe in him in the proper way, you get better. That's the evidence. If you don't believe in him, you don't get better. If you say you believe in him, forget it. You'll die from cancer and everything else. And you go to hell. It's only two places. The good and the evil. And there's so much I could say about that. I don't want to. But there's something you need to know, which is, I think will just make the point, is that when you put somebody on a pedestal, you put your girlfriend on a pedestal. You put Obama on a pedestal because he gives you things. He's like a god. But that's what tyrants are. That's what everybody who manipulates will promise what it doesn't deliver. But it keeps promising and doesn't deliver. And you put your hope in that person. And you get frustrated when he doesn't deliver. And then you feel guilty for that. And but you don't want to admit you're wrong about him. This can be, not everybody's that way. So what I'm trying to say is that the real person of Jesus has a message in him that understands the dilemma of the human race, that we're all born in sin and we cannot extricate ourselves from our problem, only project it from generation to generation, and we can do the best we can. And so, there are parasites and predators who become eventually our governments, because if you look at the governments of the world, you see they're all run by obsequious dummies or cruel tyrants. But there are very few places in the world like America and what's left of England. You see, not many places left. America, if America goes, you say goodbye to the whole world for another 1,000 years. You'll never find sanity and happiness ever again if we allow this to happen. But it's important to understand that you cannot be saved. Nothing can save you. Nobody can save you. It's like sinking in a swamp. And if you sink in a swamp, if you find yourself in a swamp and you struggle, you'll go down quickly. And if you realize that you can't struggle, you could have a little extra time for if somebody comes with a rope, but nobody comes. So you sink anyway. But with salvation, I won't go into the details of the say, but when you find faith and belief, like our late friend did here, you are saved, in a sense, from the grasp of the world. So, let's see if I can find a way of saying it. You transfer to a different master. Faith transfers you to the spirit that gave birth to you as innocence as a child, but where it was lost. So that you went through life looking for answers, and life got worse and worse, and you got sicker and sicker, and more complex. Your financial conditions, your family, all fell apart. And so some people become bitter, some people continue searching until they find. And when you find it, how can I say it? You are saved. And saving means you owe your life to Him that saved you. There's an old adage where, maybe in China and places like that, if somebody saves you from drowning, you owe your life to that person. It's kind of symbolic. You owe your life to what saves you. That's a good thing. But you also owe your life to what corrupts you. See that? And it's a very similar dynamic, and you cannot help but pass it on to other people. And if you're not going to pass it on to me, you better not get buried and just isolate yourself. So when you've transferred when your soul is transferred to that, you cannot sin. Your preachers say that's not true. And the Bible says if you're saved, you cannot sin. For this reason, Jesus, the Savior, came into being. You cannot sin because sin doesn't own you. You see, in other words, when you belong to God, you embody His thoughts and His will on earth as it is in heaven. You can't help it. You're under a compulsion. I live under a compulsion to do what is right. Cannot help myself, cannot stop it, nor do I want to. If But adversely, you could be the same way. I like what I'm doing. I want to drink all I want. I want all the women I want. I like it this way. I don't care if I do die. See? Salvation is a compulsion. There is no freedom. There's only the freedom to do right from wrong, or do wrong from right. Right to do wrong, wrong. How do I say that? Someone say it for me.
The freedom to be. I don't know. I can't say it.
Somebody give it a shot. My tongue is
I
tied.
understand it, but I can't say it.
Yeah, the freedom from wrong to do right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the freedom from right to do
wrong.
wrong. One
Right.
is license, and one is really freedom.
That's correct. And sometimes I get tongue-tied with that one. But I guess it's easy to get tongue-tied sometimes with the things I say. But the point is, when you are free from wrong to do right, you cannot sin. You can spill milk. That's not a sin. You can make a mistake. It's not a sin. Sin is a moral thing. Making mistakes is how you learn. See? Any questions?
Well, it's a lot to take in, but let's see if I can. I think I was confused by the choice. I always thought, well, we had a choice.
You don't. Because every choice you make is a lesser evil. Perhaps a lesser evil, but still evil. Right. So you go to your grave at a slower pace. You see, it might be a right choice, but doesn't serve the purpose of the kingdom of heaven. But in a sense it does, because if in the end you see every choice you ever made went astray, and the Bible says it this way, everything bad happens for good for those that love the Lord. Okay, now everything bad that happened to me made me a better person. See? And if I have that something in me that I said I had, if I had that something in me that didn't resent, wasn't intimidated, because intimidation would cause the transfer of be temptation to cause me to transfer my loyalty from what I know is right in my heart to the pressure, the temptation. So if I'd done that, I wouldn't be talking to you now. So everything bad happens for good. If you understand that when you have trials and tribulations and things don't work out, if you could just realize that where your strength lies, where happiness lies, I don't know if that word happiness is relevant, but where health, happiness, future, life after death happens is in the moment of your tribulation, whereby you endure the trial and tribulation and not become bitter but become better. That's where it is. Not looking for happiness and money and power and security. But it will come, but you don't look for it. Because of the innocence, the radiation of innocence, you will be hated. You will come under attack. Don't think for 1 minute that everything's going to be honky-dory if you become saved. No, you actually suddenly expose yourself to the world and you're radiating and people are looking. Some people will love you. Other people will try to take you down. And if those are the people who take you down wherever you go, it's going to happen in business everywhere, in your home, your wife, your children. Everybody will take it. Everybody who's anybody like that, negatively slanted, will take you down. But the more you practice not reacting, you won't react because you can't, because reaction means you're a servant. It represents where you're coming from. And that's why people will intimidate you first to test you, to see if you belong to them. And if you show any fear or anger, they'll have you.
Right.
But if there's no fear and anger, they back away. That's like turning the other cheek, so to speak. You don't return evil for evil. See? You return good for it. But you're not reacting. That's where the good is coming through you.
Okay.
Now, Now, I'll sort of wind up here now. Now, if you can find that path, you will feel no stress when stress comes. You'll stress the stressors. You will just not feel anything. There's no effort on your part not to feel any stress. If somebody puts a gun to your head, you don't feel stress. It's not there. You feel dangers, trials and tribulations. You go without food. You won't feel stress. You'll keep your wits about you. It's always there, and you don't feel the stress. You don't feel the trials and tribulations. Those who try you feel the pain in trying to make you feel the pain. So now here we come to the very last part of everything I've said. I'm leading up to it. So there's two kinds of loves. As I said, one kind of love will make you worse. Love in all the wrong places. And love is a longing, a yearning for something. And if you are twisted, the corrupted, the yearning will be external. And up pops the devil, so to speak, in everybody. Looking for love in all the wrong places. You may not have that word in your head, but it's what happens. You can't help but draw it to you. Even your friends that are fiends, all of them. And if there's any good one there, you won't listen to them. They'll turn away from you. See that? So, the other love is a yearning inward, which I have a young lady here, benefited from that. She was rewarded by that. She's followed the path. She has the faith. She doesn't need me anymore. If I never see her again, she'll be fine. She'll think fondly of me once in a while, but she doesn't need to come. I don't need to see her anymore. She wants to come. It's nice. See, she'll be all right for the rest of her life. She had enough suffering. Now she sees what faith does. It cures. It heals. It enamors a person to the true God. And so now she doesn't realize she's worshipping God. But it isn't with mumbo-jumbo. It isn't through rituals. It's just the kingdom of heaven is within her. Now, if she dies, when she comes to the age where she passes away and she's lived her life, she's going to get younger and younger and prettier. See, she is. You'll see. Just in a couple of months, you won't recognize. She's just transformed. There's an afterlife value in this. If you understand you're going to have trials and tribulations. You had one with that lady we were talking about. You almost fell for that, didn't you? See, but you learned it. And you pull back and you don't feel any pain now, do you? Good. See, so in the end, the fact that you've recognized the Savior, right? You have. And you're His. And He is God's, right? So, if you have anybody else as your Savior, your preacher, your rabbi, your girlfriend, Obama, Hitler, Mussolini, all the bad guys. If you have anybody on a pedestal, if you have money as your goal, anything that's more important, anything and anyone more important. When that person dies, if you're attached to your mother, your father, in that sense, you could be addicted to your mother and guilted to help your mother and guilted to submit to your father. You see, there could be all kinds of addicted to drugs and alcohol, all the things that rise to the occasion to relieve the pain of your guilt, as if it was some kind of savior which only making you worse. It saves you from being saved. And yet it seems like salvation. You can go to church and every week, and then one week not go to church, and then when you don't go to church, you don't get your fix. And when you don't get your fix, you feel guilty for not going to church. But it's the same thing as a drug addict feeling guilty when he doesn't. Yeah, the guilt catches up with you. And the alcoholic feels guilty for not drinking. He has to get his drink. And that is a fix. And that's equivalent to salvation. And there's always somebody that provides for it. See? It's a system of things. And so in drugs you have the God of your world is in the jungles of South America somewhere, and then there's something behind him, right? So the beauty of it is this, and if I can give you a nice clear shot of you love your mother too much, you're too close to your mother, and she dies. You can apply this to anything, just let me give one thing. She dies, and she's in the grave. If your sense of worth has come from your mother, you're in the grave with her. She does not rise. Do you get the analogy here? But Jesus, the story is, he rises from the grave, right? He dies a noble person. He doesn't yield to any stress. He cries out to let everybody forgive them, Father, for those who are killing me. I'm adding these words in. Know not what they do. They didn't. They were programmed to the degree that they did not know they were doing the bidding. They did not know they were programmed this way. They were favored by, they had a job to murder, to kill, to torture, but they weren't born that way. There's also the story of the good thief and the bad thief. Both thieves, one was redeemable, one mocked him, right from the cross. There are people just like that. One recognized him. He said, this day you will be with me in paradise. Right at the end, where they're both dying. He didn't have to be good all his life. He only had to recognize. See? And so, when you are saved by means of the Immaculate Conception, because he comes with a message that he's a believable person. The lie in the beginning of Paradise Lost became the truth. See that? In other words, the whole human race comes from the fact that Adam doubted God and believed the woman who was influenced by whatever that was. And so the whole human, then he makes the excuse, right? So even the excuse wasn't even his own thought anymore. And what your barrier is your barrier is the rationalization. That's all you need to understand. Are you making excuses? Are you rationalizing it? Because it isn't you. It's trying to keep you self-righteous. Try to own you by rationalizing everything, by studying Christianity or Judaism or anything else to try to right the wrong, to improve yourself, to struggle with your problems. And struggling with your problems looks like it's noble, but it'll make you worse. Trying to save yourself. You're getting in the way of who could help you. So, in order to be saved, you have to have someone who is completely innocent and believable. And there isn't anybody. That's why the Immaculate Conception, it had to have a different father. It's very simple. And that, so that he had all the knowledge and the influence to have authority over everybody. Everybody who'd recognize that authority. And everybody who'd recognize that authority where he's coming, where you recognize mine, where I'm coming from. That made you better. I didn't.
Yes, I
I
was going
did.
to say, that's kind of like a turning point for me when I recognized that. Which you just
Recognize where I was coming from.
Yes,
Is
and
the whole secret.
And I understood that was the secret, and that was, I was trying to explain it to someone.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's just like when you're willing to give, I was willing to let go. And
It's hard to explain this.
Yes, it is.
See, what it is simply a direct pipeline. Where I'm coming from, you saw it. I didn't do anything. I'm just transparent.
Right.
See, so what I say to you is authority. And it counters the authority of your background. It's a counter-hypnotic state.
Right.
See?
I remember one time you hypnotized someone here, or you did your thing to somebody, and then another lady, it was Mary, And then another lady came up there, and she wasn't ready to.
That's right.
She wasn't ready to cross over and accept whatever that
You
is.
you can't help a person who's not ready.
Yeah, she just isn't ready.
No,
but
no.
I
But she's
saw that.
better now, by the way. She did get. Where's she?
That was me.
Was that you? No, that wasn't you, was
Oh,
it?
yeah, it was you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready. I didn't
You weren't ready for a long time.
understand it.
No. You are now.
I changed
You're getting
a lot.
better now.
You had to tell me to go home and not come back in order for me to
That's
get
right.
it.
Yeah.
And that's when I got it, was alone. I was so mixed up. I don't know if it was because of religion I had as a child that didn't make any
You
sense.
caught up with me, though. You were quite.
I put you on a pedestal.
That's what. And if you put me on a pedestal, I can't help you because then you make me God, and then you're going to resent me for not helping you and giving me all that money.
Exactly.
See?
And I didn't understand that as clearly as I did today when you said that. It's like, that's what it was.
It seems like I'm understanding it more and more and more and
Yeah,
more.
but the more understanding begets understanding.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm going to finish off now. So therefore, your faith in God saves you, right? You can do no wrong. You can't sin anymore. You'll see that you can't.
Yeah, I see that.
You can't do it.
That was my inheritance when I was born.
Yeah, but you can't. But you couldn't help but sin otherwise.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So Jesus comes to save you from sin, and therefore you are subject to Him and not subject to the world.
I can't believe I'm understanding this.
Yeah, but the average preacher will curse me for saying that, because they'll always tell you, that we're all sinners, and after you're dead, then you're going to get some kind of reward. Yes, it'll be the devil. See if you don't mind me saying so. But here's the last part of it. Since He rose from the grave, the one you loved was born, came into the world. You saw the light of God in Him. You recognized it, and you took it at its word. You are now in a different state. You're no longer. Well, I've got to use the analogy. So I've got to take the analogy of your mother, that you're addicted to your mother and you're addicted to your sisters, or addicted to your husband, you had him on a bed and he dies. You love your wife too much and she dies. And you worshipped her, but you never were a man. You never said no to her, but you loved her, did everything you can to keep her loving you, and then she dies. Then you find yourself lost or even hate her for dying. But the truth of the matter is that you actually hate people for dying because you're so attached to the illusion of worth you've got. And all of a sudden you're lost. But the truth of the matter is the person you worshipped was dead. And when they went and they played the role of God, which they shouldn't have done, and they're in the grave, and you are in the grave with them. Your soul is connected to them in the earth, or wherever they happen to be. But with Jesus, He rises. The whole idea, Him rising from the grave, which is true, it comes back to life. He's able to. He has this magic, and we all have this magic. If we could I have this magic. I have some of it. To wit, to woo. I have that, and it's a gift, and I enjoy giving. I enjoy that gift. I enjoy being here every Sunday. I enjoy doing what I do. It's the more I have, the more I got. The more I give, the more I have to give. I can't get rid of it. I've only had 4 hours sleep last night. Maybe I could do a better show today but I don't seem to need more than 4 hours sleep every night. I'm like a little kid. I got to get up in the morning and see what's going to go on. Can't afford to sleep. Life is too interesting. I've got a lot to do. So what you're doing is, when He rises, when you die, you're with Him, because you're attached to Him. You're attached. You're attached to the Savior, who's attached to God. Simple. Don't you get it now? But it's a better explanation that the preachers give.
So when they say none can come unto the Father except through me, when Jesus said
Yes.
that, so that spirit in you that I recognize is Jesus' spirit?
I don't see how it could be any other way. But I don't feel Jesus-like. I just feel like just me. I'm Grandpa. This is all I am. But to people who need help, they see that side. But my grandchildren see that too. That's why I'm able to help them. If there's any problems, they always come to me. I get to straighten them out. I'm the authority in the home. I'm the grand poobah. See? And that's what older people should be like. That's our use. That's our use. What we've discovered, we share. What we have discovered through suffering and salvation, we share. And the children, believe it or not, I mean, I've got David's kids, are 9 and 11. They go to bed listening to my CD. They love it. I couldn't help them. They all wanted one of these. And they're, for their age, brilliant. You can talk to them like they're 30 years old. They can talk to you like they're 30 years old. You can reason with them. You can have a conversation with them. But you could do that when they were 3. But the child is closer to light when they're younger. And as they grow older, they grow decrepit. And then, please God, get so decrepit, they went out. And this is where I'm going to leave you today. I hope that it had some value. I didn't mean to talk so much, but I had someone here that is experiencing regeneration. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.